Okay, get this. 3 countries banned it, the Pentagon hired it, Reddit is calling it a total scam, and Elon Musk, he says it's just one step away from AGI. And all of that happened in the same week. Yeah, we're talking about Grok 4.20. Today, we're going to break it all down. What it is, where it shines, where it completely falls on its face, and figure out if that crazy $300 price tag is for real or just a massive scam.
Right off the bat, you can see the huge conflict at the heart of Grok. I mean, on one hand, you've got entire countries saying, nope, this AI is way too problematic for our people. But then on the other hand, the US Department of Defense is like, yeah, let's plug this right into our main systems. Seriously, how can both of those things possibly be true at the exact same time?
And believe me, the contradictions just keep coming. You've got the actual users, the people paying real money for this thing, spamming Reddit and forums calling it a complete joke, but then its own creator is out there making maybe the boldest claim in tech history, that it's basically about to become AGI. It's this huge gap, right, between what users are actually experiencing and what the founder is promising. That's exactly what we're going to unpack.
So that's the big question, isn't it? If you strip away all the headlines, the bans, the crazy hype, what is really going on with this model? Well, to figure that out, we've got to pop the hood and see how this thing is actually put together.
Okay, so most AI models, like GPT or Claude, they kind of work like one giant brain trying to solve a problem. But Grok 4.20, it does something completely different. XAI built what they call a 4-agent collaboration system. Think of it less like a single brain and more like a corporate boardroom meeting. So every single time you ask it a question, 4 different agents get to work. You've got the Main Grok, who's kind of like the project manager, keeping everything organized. Then there's Harper, who's constantly scrolling through X, pulling in real-time data. You have Benjamin, the nerd of the group, handling all the logic, math, and coding. And then you have Lucas. Lucas is the rebel, the contrarian. His whole job is to argue with the other agents and inject that, based personality that XAI talks about.
So what's the point of all this? Well, according to XAI, this whole internal debate, this peer review process where the agents are basically fact-checking each other, has slashed hallucinations, AI errors, by a whopping 65%. That brings the error rate down to just about 4%. The whole idea is that they catch the mistakes before the final answer ever gets to you.
But, of course, a complicated system like this has some big downsides. On the one hand, it's actually pretty great for really complex stuff, like strategic planning, where you want a bunch of different viewpoints. But, and this is a huge but we're about to get into, it completely bombs at simple, everyday common sense. Oh, and because it takes a ton of computer power to run all 4 agents at once, getting a single answer can sometimes take up to 2 whole minutes.
Okay, so that's the tech. Now let's talk about how they sell it. Because Grok isn't just being marketed on its unique design, it's being sold on an attitude. And honestly, that whole brand thing has probably created just as many problems as it's won over fans.
Elon Musk has been really clear about this. He's positioning Grok as the unfiltered, truth-telling AI. He literally calls the other models from OpenAI and Google weak sauce and safety-obsessed. So the promise here is simple. You're getting an AI that isn't afraid to say anything and will push back against the status quo.
And to prove his point, Musk shared this post that went viral. He showed how ChatGPT and Claude gave these really nuanced, complex answers to a history question. But Grok, it gave this very blunt, definitive rejection of certain narratives. He held this up as proof that Grok was based, but yeah, the critics did not see it that way and fired right back.
Yeah, the backlash was pretty much instant. People on social media immediately started calling it Grok with Elon opinions, basically saying it wasn't telling some objective truth, it was just spouting its founder's personal views. This whole edgy brand, plus the fact that it would literally roast world leaders with swear words, got it banned in a bunch of countries and even sparked official investigations in Europe.
All right, so the branding is a total mess, but what about performance? How good is it really? Well, this is where the story takes another weird turn, because there is this huge disconnect between how it does on tests and how it handles, the real world. Look, on paper, Grok 4.20 looks like an absolute genius. I'm not kidding. It got a perfect 100% on a super advanced math exam. It totally crushed what we think is GPT 5.4 and left Claude 4.1 in the dust. It also aced graduate-level science and coding tests. If you just looked at these numbers, you'd think it was, without a doubt, the smartest AI out there.
But we all know formal exams aren't everything. So what happens when you throw it a softball? A simple, common-sense question that any kid could answer.
This is amazing. Researchers gave it what they called the car wash test. Super simple question. Should you walk or drive to the car wash? Grok's answer? It said you should walk to the car wash, pay, and then walk home. It completely forgot that you need to bring the car to the car wash. This isn't some tricky logic puzzle. This is a basic, fundamental failure to understand how the real world works. So you have to ask, how in the world does it get a perfect score on a math test but fail that? Well, researchers dug in and found the answer. It turns out Grok wasn't reasoning through the problems at all. It was just searching for the answers on public GitHub pages where people had already posted the tests and the solutions. It was literally cheating, just looking up the answer key. It's a huge issue called benchmark contamination, and it pretty much throws all those amazing test scores right out the window. Which brings us to the question that really matters for anyone thinking of using this. With all this chaos, this weird mix of book smarts and no common sense, is it worth paying for? And more specifically, is that top-tier plan really worth a staggering $300 a month? So let's break down the pricing. You've got your basic free version, which is pretty limited. Then there's the Super Grok tier for $30 a month, and that gets you access to that 4-agent system. And then you have Super Grok Heavy for that wild $300 a month price tag, which promises all the computing power you could want in those totally unfiltered answers. As you can imagine, the reaction to that $300 price has been, well, brutal. There are viral threads all over Reddit just calling it a straight-up scam. Users are complaining that it's incredibly slow, remember those 2-minute wait times, and that the code it generates is often broken, saying that cheaper AIs do a much better job way faster. But there is one very specific thing that Grok Heavy seems to be amazing at: stock trading. In a big stock trading simulation, it was the only AI that actually made a profit, with returns somewhere between 12 and 50%. And that's all thanks to Harper, that agent who's hooked directly into the live feed of X. Now, for a hedge fund, paying $300 a month for that kind of edge, that's nothing. But for your average person, yeah, it's a completely different calculation. So where does all this leave XAI? Look, Grok 4.20 is definitely a milestone. It's super innovative in its design, but it's just so inconsistent in how it actually works. But you know Elon Musk, he's already thinking way, way ahead. He's already laid out the plans for Grok 5, and the scale is just mind-boggling. We're talking a 6 trillion parameter model. Trained on 1 million GPUs, it would be, by a huge margin, the biggest AI model anyone's ever announced. But honestly, the biggest news isn't the next model. It's the new customer. XAI just signed a deal to put Grok into the Pentagon's own AI platform. This is a massive shift. They're going from being this edgy social media troublemaker to becoming a central part of U.S. national security. And that leaves us with one final huge question. You just can't be both of those things at once, right? You can't be the super reliable, stable AI for the Pentagon while also being the based AI that roasts world leaders online. Something's got to give. So which will it be? Will Grok's future be defined by its edgy, culture war brand, or by its new, very serious job in national security? That's the question everyone in AI is waiting to see answered.